Hello, this is chapter 3 of The Great Gatsby. And in this chapter we're going to actually meet Gatsby, and we're going to find Nick contemplating his relationship with these people, life in New York in general, and reaching the triumphant conclusion that he is one of the few honest people that he has ever known. So Nick remains ultimately in a self-congratulatory mode. The chapter opens with a breathtaking description of the excesses of life at Gatsby's house. There was music from my neighbour's house through the summer nights. In his blue gardens, men and girls came and went like moths among the whisperings and the champagne and the stars. So we keep on getting this stack of images of luxury, of enjoyment, of beauty. There are 2 motorboats. The Rolls Royce becomes an omnibus, old-fashioned word, just means that the Rolls Royce is doing the job of a bus. Scampered like a brisk yellow bug to meet all trains. So there's a constant stream of visitors coming to the house. And extra servants, including a gardener, toil all day with mops and scrubbing brushes and hammers and garden shears, repairing the ravages of the night before. So it's a cycle of destruction and repair, but it's all portrayed as being rather glorious. Inside the kitchen, massive amounts of food are delivered every Friday, crates of oranges and lemons. At least once a fortnight, a corps of caterers, like we're on military proportions here, come down with several 100 feet of canvas and enough coloured lights to make a Christmas tree out of Gatsby's enormous garden. Buffet tables, they're described, it's the most rich and beautiful description. Glistening hors d'oeuvres, spice-baked hams crowded against salads of harlequin designs. A harlequin is a clown, someone who dances, so that's also making the atmosphere here. Pastry pigs and turkeys bewitched in dark gold. In the main hall, a bar with a real brass rail, and liquors with cordials so long forgotten that it's just this abundance, this fantastic picture of this extraordinarily opulent and lavish party. By 7 o'clock, the orchestra has arrived, and it's not just a 3-piece band, it's the whole shebang, with pitiful oboes and trombones and saxophones and viols and cornets and piccolos and lows and highs. Look at the way he accumulates. So he makes a big list. This whole opening section is a great big list which enumerates the things that are in Gatsby's house and the way in which the parties are set up. And you will find massive number of commas. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have polysyndeton, where things are joined together with conjunctions. But the verandas are gaudy with primary colours. The women are exciting. Their hair is bobbed. That means cut short, as you know, in strange new ways. It was new for women to wear their hair short. They'd always worn it long and up before now. Floating rounds of cocktails permeate the garden. The air is alive with chatter. The lights grow brighter as the earth lurches away from the sun. So even the earth has had a few drinks and is lurching. And now the orchestra is playing yellow cocktail music. And the opera of voices pitches a key higher. So he takes the musical image, having given us the impression of the orchestra setting up, and he extends it and takes it even further. One of the things that you might be interested to know about is a concept called synesthesia. It is where emotions and colours are said to be united. So the yellow cocktail music. So the emotions evoked by the music are described as being yellow. We discover that Nick is one of the few guests who's actually been invited when he goes. And he goes all dressed up in his white flannels, gets nicely dressed. A chauffeur had come to hand him a formally written invitation. It's all done very properly. When he got there to the party, he noticed there were a few people he recognised from his commuter train, and he was pretty sure that they were buying or selling something, and that they were aware at least of they were agonisingly aware of the easy money in the vicinity, and convinced that it was theirs after just a few words in the right key. So this is a place where everything's very lavish and the wealth is very easy to come by. He bumps into Jordan Baker again, and in no time at all, she held my hand impersonally, said that she'd take care of me in a minute, came back with her slender golden arm resting in mine. We descended the steps and sauntered into the garden. A tray of cocktails floated at us through the twilight. Beautiful image, but look, we get this constant use of disembodiment. The tray just appears. It's not carried by anybody. Comes to him through the twilight. We get a tour of the party. We get anecdotes. The girl who accidentally needed her dress. She damaged her dress when she was at the last party and tore it. And a replacement gown was provided unasked by Gatsby, and the gown cost $265. This is in 1929, so we're talking several $1,000s worth in modern money. And then we start with the rumours, which are that Gatsby has been a spy, a German spy during the war, that he's killed a man once, that he was in the American Army during the war, which does turn out to be true, but I bet by the look of him that he killed a man. So there's this romance, this fictional past being invented for Gatsby. After a little while, Jordan says, let's get out, and they go for a walk around the house, and they have an encounter with a man in the library. He is a stout middle-aged man with enormous owl-eyed spectacles, sitting somewhat drunk on the edge of a great table, staring with unsteady concentration at the shelves of books. Now, what this guy has done is go to have a rest after he's got a bit drunk, and he's resting in the library, and he is marvelling at the fact that what's in the library are real books. They're not fake books, they're real books. But something which you might not understand is that he says, it's a bona fide piece of printed matter, he cried triumphantly. It fooled me. What thoroughness, what realism. He knew when to stop too. He didn't cut the pages. Okay, so until about, even the 1950s, you didn't, in a nice book, it didn't arrive with all the pages ready to read. They were folded in four, you print 4 pages, or it might even be 8 actually, pages on a sheet of paper, and then it's folded, and those folded sections are stitched into the book. Have a look in an old book and you'll see it for yourself. But when you buy it, the folds are still in it. So the first thing you have to do is get a paper knife and actually cut the pages. So this man is sitting in a library which he finds marvellous because it's got real books, but he knows that the books haven't been read. We are in this society and in this house and in this world, we are a long way from what a library is intended to be for and what books are supposed to do. Okay, so then when this goes on, they sort of chatter quite a bit more. That man, Owl Eyes, turns out, spoiler alert, to be the only person that actually does turn up from Gatsby's party past. He's the only guy that actually shows up at the funeral, so he's got a decent molecule in his body. We get a vivid description of the parties and the dancing and the stage twins and the girls holding each other tortuously, fashionably. A great number of single girls dancing and individualistically relieving the orchestra for a moment of the burden. By midnight, the hilarity had increased. A celebrated tenor had sung in Italian, a notorious contralto. There were people doing stunts all over the garden, while happy, vacuous, that's important, it means it's completely empty, bursts of laughter rose toward the summer sky. A pair of stage twins, who turned out to be somebody we met earlier, did a baby act in costume, and champagne was served in glasses bigger than finger bowls, so they're really, really big glasses. The moon had risen higher, and floating in the sound, that means the water, was a triangle of silver scales, trembling a little to the stiff, tinny drip of the banjos on the lawn. Beautiful image of this over-the-top event. He's still with Jordan Baker, and they go out and meet somebody who turns out to be Gatsby. But because he's never met him before, Nick's never met him, nobody seems to really know him, Gatsby has this affectation, which is that he calls everybody old sport. He's got this pseudo-Britishness, which is important because it indicates the way he's manufactured himself to fit a description that he's made up. When we go on a little bit further, Nick expresses cynicism. He says, and this is a good quote to get, he would have accepted without question that Gatsby sprang from the swamps of Louisiana or from the lower east side of New York. Those are both poor areas. That was comprehensible. But young men didn't, at least in my provincial experience, I believed they didn't, drift coolly out of nowhere and buy a palace on Long Island Sound. So Nick realises that there's something fishy about Gatsby's past. Jordan, there's a boom of a bass drum, everything's getting to be a little bit sort of in the early hours of the morning. And we go on to have Jordan and him sort of, Jordan gives him a commentary on the guest, and you can read that for yourself to see the sorts of things that she says about people. But by the time we get to the end, there's been an incident where one of the guests has had a car accident as they left the party. And it's really, really comical. It's the owl-eyed man who's in the car, and blinded by the headlights and confused by the incessant groaning of the horns, he stands swaying for a moment. And he says, "What's the matter? Did we run out of gas?" And we have this ridiculous description of the fact that the person who's in the car is too drunk to understand that they can't drive on because the wheel has come off the car. So this is like just an indication of how completely over the top everything is. A sudden emptiness seemed to flow now from the windows and the great doors, endowing with complete isolation the figure of the host, who stood on the porch, his hand up in a formal gesture of farewell. So when Gatsby waves his guests away, the sudden emptiness, which is important, it's the moral vacuousness, it's the emptiness of his life. Then we have a time shift, and Nick tells us that he's reading over what he's written so far, and he tells us that what he's been doing is not just going to parties, but he's been going to work. He's started to like New York. He has romantic fantasies about the women that he follows. And then on the very last page of the chapter, it's revealed that he discovers that Jordan Baker is a cheat. She had moved her ball around from a bad lie in the semi-final round, that's with golf, and he describes her as incurably dishonest. She wasn't able to endure being at a disadvantage. And given this unwillingness, I suppose she'd begun dealing in subterfuges when she was very young. So he says, you know, okay, I realise that this is a person who is a liar and a cheat. And then there's a very prescient exchange between Daisy and Nick. They're driving somewhere badly. Nick says, "You're a rotten driver," and she says, "I'm careful." "No, you're not." "Well, other people are," she said lightly. Daisy doesn't change. Daisy and Tom think other people should change around them. He says, "Suppose you met somebody just as careless as yourself." And she says, "I hope I never will. I hate careless people. That's why I like you." Now, the summation that Nick gives us at the end of the book is that Tom and Daisy are careless people. She says she hates them. That's because she's one of them. For a second, I thought I loved her. But then he realises that he's actually got something going with a girl down home, and he needs to break that off before he can do anything with anyone else, let alone a married woman who's his cousin. And closes with this self-congratulatory remark that I am one of the few honest people that I have ever known.